Today we are welcoming Courtney Weinblatt Fasciano, who graduated from Nobles in the class of 2002, and she founded Cesta Collective in 2018 with a mission to create beautiful products while making a difference in the world. Anyone who visits their website immediately sees their commitment to sustainability in an industry that's sort of just on the cutting edge of thinking differently about the environmental and social tolls of fashion. So Courtney, first of all, welcome and thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. This is fun. It's actually like one of my very first podcasts, so that's exciting.
Awesome. So I'd love if you could start off by talking a little bit about the fashion industry and sustainability, and specifically your background in high fashion. How does the industry as a whole think about their approach to sustainability?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think a lot of lip service is paid to greenwashing and people, having a small capsule collection that's eco or sustainable. But at the basis of it, like, what does that really mean? And how does that ever resonate to a consumer except kind of feeling good about a purchase with very little transparency? There's no governing board yet who can say what is or is not sustainable or is not ethical. It really is up to every single brand to define those terms themselves, which is dangerous. I was a fashion editor for a decade and really did kind of all the rounds. Started at the New York Times, at T Magazine, went to Harper's Bazaar where I was the jewelry and watch editor, and then went to Marie Claire where I was for my longest stint, about 7 years, and covered ready to wear and was the market director there running the whole fashion department. So New York, London, Milan, Paris, I've been to all of those fashion weeks and really seen everything in market from a Gap t-shirt to Chanel Couture. And, I think a big part of the genesis of my business and my personal frustration with this exact, topic is that nobody really talks about the meat of the issue or the why or the how or like truly the what. And sustainability is more than just raw materials, although certainly raw materials are incredibly important and something that we focus on very closely, but it's a bigger ecosystem, right? It's about the packaging. It's about the manufacturing. It's about the capital that you use to build a business. It's about waste and overage. It's about sales and markdowns. And most importantly, I think it's about human rights capital. Who are the actual people making these products? What are they being paid? And at what point do they have, a say in that process? A lot has happened in the past 5 years where I think people are starting to wake up to a lot of this. But again, like it's on every business to self-report, which is scary.
Yeah. So when you, in 2018, which I guess, almost 5 years ago now, and I'm sure you were thinking about this business a lot before you actually founded it, there's so many things, as you just mentioned. Did you have to kind of focus on one or two things or pick and choose, or did you feel like you had a commitment to thinking differently?
Yeah. When we started, I met my co-founder who's incredible, my other half, and certainly Cesta would never have been born without, her immense talent. We are a great team and still actually a team of two, which is wild considering how much the business has grown and kind of what we've been through. Our two backgrounds lent itself collectively to being able to do a lot of this on our own and being really, really scrappy hard workers and kind of liking the whole process. But we started outlining some specific tenets that either were born out of a frustration with our previous experiences in the industry or things that brands weren't talking about yet, especially in 2018. And those tenets were, trying to work with best-in-class artisans who were overlooked by luxury brands, working with women hand in hand on important economic development, and actually audited fair price strategies and fair price wages, and then trying to do the best that we can on every other front. So that is everything from how do we use the most sustainable materials currently available, almost regardless of price. Let's make that a founding tenet of the brand. How do we think about the split between wholesale and e-commerce and production and how much we're producing from a sustainability perspective? And also, how do we work on a small, investor round with people who have a like-minded commitment to building this kind of business? Because a lot of times the tail will wag the dog on that, and those are really important things for us from the beginning. But it really came from this place of let's work with talented women who are being overlooked, where we think we can have a difference, and where we think we can bring a unique perspective. And then from there we were like, we're going to sell finance actually, which is crazy, and let's be smart about that. I had just worked at a shoe business which has crazy return rates. My co-founder Erin had been in ready to wear, and similarly sizing's an issue, and so we said, okay, let's be smart. Let's pick a product that's ageless and sizeless, and hence basket handbags fit the mark there for us.
Yeah, I was going to say anyone who's looked at the website again or seen a Cesta bag in the wild knows how absolutely beautiful those products are. You've talked about raw materials, and again, to think about that bags are really for anyone, regardless of size, preference. Your designs are so classic. Can you talk to us about the materials that go into that handbag? And I think that also will help shed light on how you think about sustainability within each step of the process.
Yeah, sure. So when we started, we really honed in on this beautiful weave style that's very specific to Rwanda, which I mean is ironic given Noble's deep ties to Rwanda actually, and the Snyders and how they go often. And I've been emailing with Ben and Sarah a bit about that. I've actually worked my way through their whole reading list about the genocide in Rwanda. My husband actually made some films for the UN post-genocide in Rwanda. So it's a place that's near and dear to our family, our hearts, and certainly my extended Noble's family. But, were things that I kind of, after we were sampling, went back and thought, oh my gosh, it's like it all kind of laid out in front of me. But this weave style it's a very tight concentric sisal coil that is woven together and, previously has been made into really beautiful laundry hampers and fruit baskets and home products. But at the time, nobody was using them for a luxury handbag. And we felt like this was a huge missed opportunity for the immense, talent of these artisans. So what if we worked with them hand in hand to take something they're already doing that's endemic to the culture and so beautiful and kind of evolve it with our design aesthetic to reach a more open pocketed consumer, right? Who is willing to pay and help us create jobs on a big level. We started with about 200 artisans trained on the product. We had like 5 samples. We made a few different styles. We actually uniquely had to build or have 3D molds printed at the beginning, just to be able to hit like these new shapes that we were trying to evolve. And also our artisans are paid on a per basket basis. So anytime we can reduce their rejection rate and create less friction in their process, the smoother our artisan cooperative works. So in 2017, 2018, we started sampling with these amazing women. All of our sisal that is used in the baskets is grown in Rwanda, organically harvested. Actually, the women hand skive the leaves of the plant as well. Then the sisal is laid out to dry and dyed with vegetable dye, which is truly remarkable. If you ever look at our baskets, you'll see like we use a lot of different colors. We have one bag, our rainbow lunch pail, that uses about 43 different dye colors, and they hit our Pantone colors like to the mark. It is remarkable given that it's all vegetable dye done in our basket center with little electricity over a wood burning cauldron. I mean, it's like a witch's brew. It's wild.
That's incredible. And it's just to show you that there is this sort of sustainable organic solution to something that if you do the work behind it.
Totally. And it's important to us that all of our materials, especially in Rwanda, are cradle to grave. The water that's used for the dye can then be basically deposited back into the water table. All of our sisal plants that aren't used in the raw materials for the baskets get put into the soil. They're either used to create fertilizer or truly to reinvest in growing more sisal. A lot of the women who we work with who are weavers, their husbands now grow sisal as well. So it's a family effort. The women that we work with all have about, like 5 to 7 dependents each. They are the breadwinners of their family. Rwanda has a very unique geopolitical and gender political structure that allows for the women weavers to have a huge say in building this business. I'm not an expert in other countries that are basket weavers, but I do know that our female-led, female-founded cooperative is quite a rarity. We now have about 1,400 women who are trained on Cesta. And we pay them per basket, as I mentioned, and they set the price per basket themselves. So a head weaver will do the first iteration, and depending on the complexity of the basket, she sets the price. We don't ever negotiate with our weaver. We trust her to know the value of her worth. And it ends up being around 700 times the national average salary. So the weavers who we work with, from joining the cooperative until about 12 months later, on average, almost all of them are lifted out of extreme poverty, and majority of them become actual tax-paying citizens of the formal economy in Rwanda, which of course has a huge pay it forward effect, right?
So Cesta is a total game changer, not just for these women, but also sort of domino effect for the larger economy in their communities and for the country as a whole.
That's what we're trying to build. We're trying to build a different kind of luxury brand, right? Like, what is true luxury if you can't feel good about how the product was made from start to finish? Like, it can't just be about the panache of the advertising. I think the soul of the product truly matters. And it was something we felt like was missing in this industry. We love working with the women. They have incredibly creative, great ideas. And subsequently, we're working on all kinds of new products that will be interesting and trying to bring this theory to life in other places as well. But so the baskets get woven. We have an independent quality control team in Rwanda who does the first pass for us. We have a very low rejection rate now due to our, it's like Cesta Tupperware, basically, that the women weave around to make sure that we have as few rejections as we can. I then export them to Italy. We're actually, a few years ago, we won this big award from DHL because we are, a unique luxury brand building a global supply chain. It was like a technical Oscar, but we were very pleased to have it. It's a great discount. And then our team in Italy finishes the bag by hand as well. So this is really what sets us apart from other basket handbag businesses, is that we think as critically about the finishing materials and the rest of the process than we do the basket. We don't think it does the artistry of the weavers any justice to just strap up, throw a leather strap on them. They're really, the baskets take anywhere from 4 to 10 days to weave by hand, depending on the complexity of the weave or the shape or the dye process. So a lot of love goes into these baskets. And then the hope is truly like, let's let the rest of the bag complement that as well. Also, it means that we can sit in a luxury environment where we can command a higher price point that allows us to pay fairly along the whole supply chain. So all of the rest of our materials as well are as sustainable as can be. And that is everything from the canvas lining of the bag. So how can we use dead stock lining or organic cotton canvas that hasn't been bleached to our tannery. We do work with leather. It's the best biodegradable product for us right now. There are interesting new leather substitutes coming out that are being built with mushrooms and interesting fabrications, but we're still way too small to be able to buy into those programs. So currently leather, animal rights aside, and I'm understandable about vegans, but animal rights aside, leather is still the most sustainable option from a Earth First policy perspective. Our tannery is Blue Angel certified and won the Leather Working Group's gold medal a few years in a row. They're best in class. But then we think too about, okay, the bag's done, it's been hand edge painted, it's been hand cut, it's been hand sewn, all of these very, very special details that our Italian team is best in class at. And then the packaging, right? So it's not enough to just say you've made an eco-friendly, sustainable product and then put it in a plastic poly bag. That does no one any good. So we, even though it's, a hit on our margin, we do invest in compostable plastic poly bags that have been recycled and or are made of sugar substitutes or different materials. All of our packaging is consumer compostable.
Wow. So that's so impressive. So everything from the materials grown to create the bags to the leather to the packaging, you've thought about every possible way that you can make your products more sustainable. You mentioned one certification from DHL, but you have another certification from Nest. For those people who don't know, Nest is actually an organization that I used to help out with a little bit in New York. But can you share what sort of Nest does and why that's so important for a product like Cesta to have?
Yeah, and thank you for asking that. Nest is so important and doing such amazing work, especially for women. So fair trade certification, it's fantastic. And I'm so glad that the consumer knows and cares and looks for that in their products for sure. But fair trade is really only eligible for factory work. And that leaves a whole population of artisans, and mostly female artisans, whose work can't be audited and can't get the seal from fair trade. So Nest has created this interesting group where they can go in and audit a artisan cooperative in the home and truly certify that the good has been made, and that in an ethical way, that the artisans are paid what they say they're being paid, that they have a say in the process, all those juicy good things that you want the seal to represent. Our team that we work with in Rwanda has gone through great pains to be Nest certified. And it means that everyone can feel very safe that all of the things that Cesta represents and say that we do is true and ethical and happen. And I think, Nest's insistence on helping female entrepreneurs in developing economies have accountability in this space. And, Cesta is only one of many, many brands who work with Nest, even big companies like a J. Crew. I think Target works with them now. And so as more and more brands invest in letting the Nest seal represent this really important auditing process, the consumer will more and more look towards Nest to be a leader in helping them make good decisions in their purchase.
You mentioned sort of the leather alternatives. Are there other things within the fashion industry that kind of excite you or that you see a lot of potential in moving forward? As, again, you mentioned in 2018, people were sort of starting to talk about these things. In 2022, I think more people are thinking about their carbon footprint. That's why we're doing things like this podcast to see how people are thinking about sustainability differently in different industries. In the fashion industry specifically, whether it is with luxury goods and handbags or as a whole from your earlier experience, what trends excite you looking forward?
Yeah, well, raw materials is one thing where there's so much scientific innovation that is, I think, fascinating. And like the mushroom leather, apparently it feels incredible, which I'm excited to see myself. But I also think there's an important conversation happening right now about how many goods are produced and who's buying them and at what price, right? Because it does none of us any service. And this is actually a learning that Cesta had very early on, a tough learning, that's for sure. We had an immense order at the very beginning of the business. It was like our first order as an exclusive with a major luxury retailer. Very exciting for us. But the order was very big. And, we trusted the buyer at that time to place an order that she thought she could sell. Well, it's very hard in a wholesale environment for new brands to have 100% sell through. And so looking back, the reality was we produced more goods than should have been produced or could be sold. And that's a part of the sustainability equation, right? Because more clothes have been produced now than we will ever need in a lifetime, like all humans together, if it was redistributed. And the landfill issue is immense and troubling and very depressing, just the sheer volume of clothing sitting in landfills. So until brands think from a critical supply chain perspective on production margins and revenue targets, we're not going to be able to cut back on wastage. And it's truly like finished good wastage. And it's also about the difference between a full price strategy and a discount strategy. I very much understand why consumers look for discounted products. I totally get it. But there's a question there that I would challenge people to ask themselves, which is like, why, if this good couldn't sell until it was at an 80% markdown, why was it ever produced to begin with? Right?
Great
and
question.
work back through that retail math to then figure out, what was that consumer or the producer actually paid? So we at Cesta, we took back our business. We went from 80% wholesale to now 90% direct. And we're now producing less units for sure, but we're selling our units with a full price strategy to consumers who are learning about the brand from us, who understand the mission, who have subscribed to the why we are making these things, and understand the value of the human capital that went into making it. It's expensive. I can say it's very expensive to make a product well and to pay people well along the supply chain. And anytime you see something that is quote unquote sustainable or ethical, but at a really fantastic price, there's always a hidden price somewhere, right? And it's transformed our business and the way we as founders think about growing the business because, there is a cost for us all with all of this. And it's not even just fast fashion, to be honest. It's really all fashion and all consumer products.
Yeah, those are great questions. I think everyone listening to this will probably take a look at their closet and think,
yeah,
why do I have so many things? And also that question about discounts, I personally have never thought about that, but you're right. Why is it selling at that 80% discount? You talked about how you're now a direct to consumer brand. And just right before we finish up, where can people find Cesta bags? If they're looking for them, what can we do?
I hope they are.
Yeah, I have one. I love it. I wear it all the time.
That's great. So our website is cestacollective.com. It's CESTA, which actually means basket in a few different languages. So for the only English speakers, that's why our name is such. And you can also obviously find us on Instagram, where we are spending a lot of time making sure that our message is received and that we're reaching the right consumers and all of that. It's such an amazing power, social media, to reach the right people. And also I will say, anyone in the class of '02, there's a nice following amongst our Nobles classmates for Cesta. And I wouldn't be, where we are currently, frankly, without the support of the Nobles community. We have 2 investors who are a part of our round, who are classmates of mine and have supported us for a very long time and really gotten behind building this very different, special business. We're not like a tech investment where the balance sheet explodes. It's really a slow growth model of, a unique kind of game-changing fashion idea. I like to say now that we're focused on hidden philanthropy. So not everybody who buys a Cesta bag necessarily knows about the mission, or we like that you don't just buy it because of the mission. We like that most people who buy them love how they look and love the aesthetic, and that when we are in a wholesale environment, we can sit next to, a Saint Laurent or a Celine or a Loewe and stand up to those brands from an aesthetic and quality perspective. But then once they learn about the mission and once they learn about the profound good that their purchase has done, we hope that's really sticky to building this community of people who re-engage with the brand again. And it's interesting because it's a very specific product, but we have an incredible return rate in terms of customers coming back and buying a second or third or purchasing the whole portfolio. And we have women who are collecting our lunch pail basket, which is the one we're best known for in all the colors. But we also have consumers who say like, okay, I bought a lunch pail and a crossbody and a party pail. Now I need a tote and I need a top handle raffia. And when are you guys going to introduce a clutch? And there's a lot of conversation amongst the Cesta community about what should come next, which is super fun. I would say like one other thing that I would be remiss to not mention on this podcast, and I think is so important to the why of why. I mean, I was literally, seated second row at the Chanel show at age 29 and thinking this is exactly where I wanted to be. And I remember I called my mom that night and I said, it's not as great as I thought it was going to be. And I'm frankly bored and feel a little empty. And she said, well, you need to think about the experiences that made you feel full. And I thought a lot about the service that I did while I was at Nobles and the really important conversation around giving back and what that means and what it means to pay forward, this incredible education that I had. And it's so crazy to say, but at that, pinnacle of my young career, I thought about Nobles and this responsibility to do something important with all the gifts that I had been given through my time there. And I think that the community service reliance and the community service, commitment of the community is so important because it will affect you at some point in your life or another. And to have had that at such a young, developing age and feel how good it feels to give back has certainly changed me as a person and an entrepreneur, of course.
Absolutely. Well, Courtney, thank you so much for sharing your sort of unique story about how you've taken your lessons from Nobles and applied them to the high fashion industry.
Thanks so much, Kate.